The first gunshot that rang through the dusty streets of Silver Creek should have been warning enough for Dahlia Armstrong. But by then, it was already too late. The stagecoach had deposited her in this frontier town with nothing but 2 valises, a letter of introduction, and the misguided belief that her life was about to change for the better. It was 1875, and the West was still wild enough to make a woman from Boston question every decision that had led her here. Dahlia clutched her luggage tighter as the second shot pierced the air, followed by a chorus of shouts from the saloon across the street. "Get down, miss." A strong hand grabbed her shoulder, pulling her behind a water trough as a third shot splintered the wooden post where she'd been standing moments before. Breathless, Dahlia found herself pressed against the chest of a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. His broad-brimmed hat had slipped back, revealing hair as dark as midnight. "Are you trying to get yourself killed?" he asked, his voice deep but not unkind. "Main Street's no place to be loitering when the Sutton boys are in town." "I wasn't loitering," Dahlia protested, gathering her dignity along with her scattered belongings. "I just arrived on the afternoon coach. I'm supposed to meet someone." The stranger's expression shifted from concern to curiosity. His eyes, which she now noticed were a startling gray, studied her face with unexpected intensity. "You wouldn't happen to be Catherine Blackwell, would you?" Dahlia opened her mouth to correct him, but before she could speak, a group of men burst from the saloon, their arguments spilling into the street like whiskey from a broken bottle. "Come on," the stranger said, taking her elbow. "Let's get you somewhere safe until this blows over." Too overwhelmed to protest, Dahlia allowed herself to be guided away from the commotion, her valises now carried effortlessly in the man's free hand. He led her down a side street toward a modest building with a sign that read, "Silver Creek Hotel." "I'm not," she began again. "Save your explanations for inside, madam. Right now, I'd just like to make sure you don't catch a stray bullet on your first day in town." Inside the hotel lobby, the sounds of the street disturbance faded to a distant murmur. A portly man behind the desk looked up with mild interest as they entered. "Got yourself a visitor, Xander?" the clerk asked, eyeing Dahlia with undisguised curiosity. "This is Miss Blackwell," the man Xander replied. "She just arrived on the afternoon coach." "I'm not," Dahlia tried again, but was interrupted by the clerk's enthusiastic response. "Miss Blackwell? Well, isn't this a pleasant surprise? We weren't expecting you until tomorrow. Mr. Montgomery will be mighty pleased to hear you've arrived early." Dahlia felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "There seems to be some confusion. My name is not Catherine Blackwell. I'm Dahlia Armstrong from Boston." The silence that followed her declaration was thick enough to cut with a knife. The clerk's smile faltered and Xander's gray eyes narrowed slightly. "Armstrong," he repeated. "Not Blackwell. No, sir. I'm here to take a position as a schoolteacher. The town council sent for me 3 months ago." The clerk and Xander exchanged a look that Dahlia couldn't quite decipher. "There must be some mistake," the clerk said slowly. "We already have a schoolteacher, have had one for the past 5 years. Dahlia's stomach dropped. She fumbled in her handbag and produced the letter that had brought her across the country. "But I have this. From the Silver Creek Town Council, requesting my services and confirming my appointment." Xander took the letter, his brow furrowing as he read it. "This is dated last year, Miss Armstrong, and it's signed by Mayor Hollister." "Yes, that's right. Mayor Hollister passed away 8 months ago. His son-in-law, James Montgomery, is our mayor now." The room seemed to tilt beneath Dahlia's feet. "But that's impossible. I've been corresponding with them with someone all this time." "I don't know who you've been writing to, miss, but it wasn't the current town council," the clerk said, his voice softening with pity. Dahlia felt the weight of her situation crash down upon her. 3,000 miles from home, no job waiting, and apparently the victim of some cruel hoax or terrible misunderstanding. "If you're not Catherine Blackwell," Xander said slowly, "then who is?" The clerk cleared his throat. "Catherine Blackwell is Mayor Montgomery's mail-order bride. Due to arrive tomorrow from Philadelphia." Dahlia's eyes widened. "A mail-order bride? Someone confused me with a mail-order bride." "Appears so," Xander said, handing her letter back. Question is who and why. Before anyone could speculate further, the hotel door swung open, and a well-dressed man in his 40s strode in. His tailored suit and gold watch chain marked him as a man of means, while his confident bearing suggested a man accustomed to authority. "Vandermeer," he said, nodding curtly to Xander before turning his attention to Dahlia. His eyes lit up. "And this must be Miss Blackwell. What a delightful surprise to find you've arrived a day early." "Mayor Montgomery," the clerk began hesitantly. I'm not Catherine Blackwell," Dahlia interrupted, stepping forward. "My name is Dahlia Armstrong. I came here expecting to take a position as the town's schoolteacher, but it seems there's been a terrible misunderstanding." Montgomery's smile froze, then slowly faded. His gaze traveled from Dahlia to Xander, then back again. "Not Catherine?" "No, sir. But the stagecoach driver said a young woman matching Catherine's description had arrived. Brown hair, green eyes, traveling alone." "I'm afraid those details could describe many women, Mayor," Xander said, his voice neutral but somehow carrying an undertone that Dahlia couldn't quite place. Montgomery straightened his jacket, visibly collecting himself. "Well, this is unexpected. Miss Armstrong, was it?" "May I ask what brings you to our town if not to teach?" Dahlia explained about the letter again, showing it to the mayor, who examined it with a deepening frown. "This bears my father-in-law's signature, but I assure you no such position has been authorized by the current council. We have Mrs. Winters teaching our children and have had no cause to replace her." "Then who sent for me?" Dahlia asked, her voice smaller than she intended. Montgomery handed the letter back with a shrug. "A mystery indeed, perhaps someone using the old letterhead for a prank. Or a scheme of some sort." "What kind of scheme?" Xander asked sharply, the mayor's eyes narrowed slightly. "I wouldn't presume to know the minds of criminals, Vandermeer, though I suppose you might have better insights into such thinking given your background." The tension between the two men was palpable, and Dahlia sensed there was history there, none of it pleasant. "Regardless," Montgomery continued, turning back to Dahlia, "I'm afraid Silver Creek has no position for you, Miss Armstrong. The next eastbound stage leaves tomorrow morning. I'd advise you to be on it." With those dismissive words, he tipped his hat and left, the door swinging shut behind him. Dahlia stood motionless, fighting back tears of frustration and fear. She had spent nearly every penny she had on the journey west. Going back wasn't an option, not immediately anyway. But staying in a town where she had no prospects, no friends, and had already been mistaken for someone else seemed equally impossible. "Don't mind Montgomery," Xander said quietly. "He's always been more concerned with appearances than people." "What am I going to do?" Dahlia whispered, more to herself than to him. To her surprise, Xander Vandermeer's weathered face softened. "First thing, you need a place to stay tonight. Mr. Pearson here will set you up with a room." He turned to the clerk. "Put it on my account." "Oh, I couldn't possibly," Dahlia began. "Consider it Western hospitality," Xander cut in. "Tomorrow we'll figure out who sent that letter and why, and if Silver Creek won't have you as their teacher, there are other towns nearby that might." Something in his steady gaze made Dahlia believe him, despite the absurdity of the situation. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Xander's mouth quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "Maybe I'm just curious about who'd go to such trouble to bring a Boston schoolteacher all the way to Silver Creek under false pretenses. Or maybe," he added, his voice dropping slightly, "I don't like seeing decent folks get caught in Montgomery's games, whatever they might be." With that cryptic statement, he set her valises down and tipped his hat. "Get some rest, Miss Armstrong. Things have a way of looking clearer in the morning light." As he turned to leave, Dahlia called after him. "Mr. Vandermeer, thank you." He paused at the door, half turning. "Most folks just call me Xander, and you're welcome, Miss Armstrong." "Dahlia," she corrected. "If you're paying for my room, I think you've earned the right to use my given name." Something flickered in those storm gray eyes, amusement, perhaps, or something warmer. "Dahlia, then, sleep well." After he left, the clerk, Mr. Pearson, gave her a sympathetic smile. "Don't you worry about a thing, Miss Armstrong. Any friend of Xander Vandermeer's is welcome at my establishment, and between you and me, I'd trust his judgment over James Montgomery's any day of the week." As Dahlia followed him up the stairs to a small but clean room, she wondered what exactly she had stumbled into. One thing was certain. Silver Creek was nothing like the opportunity she had imagined. It was quickly becoming a mystery she hadn't asked to solve. That night, sleep came fitfully. Dahlia's dreams were filled with stagecoaches that never reached their destinations, letters that changed their words when she tried to read them, and a pair of storm-gray eyes that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed composure. Morning brought no immediate answers but did provide a clearer head. Dahlia dressed in her second-best traveling outfit, a practical blue cotton dress with white piping, and pinned her hair into a simple but neat arrangement. If she was to face uncertainty, she would do so with dignity. The dining room downstairs was nearly empty when she descended, save for a solitary figure at a corner table. Xander Vandermeer looked up from his coffee as she entered, and something in his expression suggested he'd been waiting for her. "Good morning," he said, rising slightly as she approached. "I took the liberty of ordering breakfast for two. I hope you don't mind." Dahlia hesitated only briefly before taking the seat opposite him. "That was presumptuous of you, Mr. Vandermeer." "Xander," he reminded her, pouring coffee into the second cup. "And yes, it was. But I figured you might want to discuss your options before the town wakes up and starts asking questions you might not want to answer." Before she could respond, the innkeeper's wife brought out plates of eggs, bacon, and biscuits with gravy. The aroma made Dahlia realize how hungry she was after her restless night. "Thank you, Mrs. Pearson," Xander said with a nod. "Everything looks delicious as always." The woman beamed at him before retreating to the kitchen, leaving them alone again. "You seem well liked here," Dahlia observed, spreading a napkin across her lap. Xander's mouth quirked. "By some, not by others. Small towns have long memories. And what do they remember about you?" He took a sip of coffee, studying her over the rim. "Curious, aren't you? I think I've earned the right to know something about the man who's appointed himself my protector." That earned her a genuine smile, brief but transformative. It softened the hard lines of his face, revealing a glimpse of someone younger, less guarded. "Fair enough. I was born here, left when I was 17 to make my fortune, came back 10 years later with more scars than gold. Been ranching just outside town for the past 3 years. That's rather sparse on details. Most life stories are when you boil them down." He cut into his eggs. "What about you? What brings a Boston schoolteacher all the way to Silver Creek, besides a mysterious letter?" Dahlia considered deflecting but decided honesty might be her best chance at gaining his trust and his continued help. "My father died last year. He was a professor at a small college, well respected but not well paid. There were debts I wasn't aware of. The house had to be sold to settle them." She took a steadying breath. "Teaching positions for women in Boston are competitive, and without my father's connections, I found myself with impressive qualifications but no prospects. So when the letter came, it seemed like providence. A fresh start in a place where I could be judged on my abilities rather than my circumstances or connections." Xander nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The West is good for fresh starts when it doesn't kill you first." "Is that what brought you back here? A fresh start?" Something darkened in his expression. "Something like that." Before she could press further, the dining room door swung open and a young woman burst in, her cheeks flushed with excitement or exertion. "Xander, is it true? There's a woman in town claiming to be—" She stopped abruptly upon seeing Dahlia. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had company." "Lucy," Xander said with a patience that suggested long acquaintance. "This is Miss Dahlia Armstrong from Boston. Dahlia, this is Lucy Winters, our school teacher." Dahlia felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. "Mrs. Winters, I assure you I'm not claiming to be anything. There's been a misunderstanding about why I was summoned here." The young woman, who couldn't have been more than 25, smiled warmly. "It's Miss Winters, actually. And please call me Lucy. I've heard some of the story already. This town talks faster than a telegraph clicks." She pulled up a chair without waiting for an invitation. "Is it true you received a letter signed by old Mayor Hollister?" Dahlia nodded, somewhat taken aback by Lucy's forwardness. "Yes, offering me a position that apparently doesn't exist." "May I see it?" Dahlia hesitated, glancing at Xander, who gave a slight nod. She retrieved the letter from her handbag and handed it to Lucy. The schoolteacher studied it intently, her brow furrowing. "This is genuine town council stationery, and that's definitely Mayor Hollister's signature. I'd recognize it anywhere he signed my own appointment letter 5 years ago. But he's been dead for 8 months, Xander pointed out. Yes, which means. Lucy looked up, her expression troubled. Someone had access to both the stationery and a way to forge his signature, or they had this letter prepared before he died and only sent it recently. But why? Dahlia asked. What possible reason could anyone have for bringing me here under false pretenses? Lucy and Xander exchanged a look that Dahlia couldn't interpret. I can think of several possibilities, Lucy said carefully, none of them particularly pleasant. Xander leaned forward. Montgomery's mail-order bride is due to arrive today. The timing seems significant. Catherine Blackwell, Dahlia murmured. The woman I was mistaken for. Lucy's eyes widened. Someone mistook you for Catherine Blackwell, who, your new mayor for one, Xander said. Along with half the town, probably, given that they were expecting a young woman traveling alone to arrive by yesterday's stage. But why would someone want to? Lucy broke off, her expression clearing. Oh, of course, it's so obvious. What is? Dahlia asked. Someone wanted to make sure Catherine Blackwell never married the mayor, Lucy explained. By having you show up in her place, they could create confusion, possibly even convince Montgomery that he'd been swindled by the marriage broker. But I corrected the mistake immediately, Dahlia pointed out. Yes, but what if you hadn't? Lucy pressed. What if you'd played along, either intentionally or because you didn't realize the mistake? By the time the real Catherine arrived, there would have been a scandal. Xander nodded slowly. Montgomery's political enemies would have loved that. He's built his reputation on being more respectable than his father-in-law ever was. Dahlia shook her head, struggling to make sense of it all. This seems awfully elaborate just to embarrass someone politically. You don't know Silver Creek politics, Lucy said grimly. Since Montgomery took over, there's been a battle brewing between his supporters, mostly the wealthier merchants and ranchers who want to civilize the town and those who preferred the more relaxed approach of Mayor Hollister. Relaxed is one word for it, Xander muttered. Corrupt is another. Lucy shot him a warning look. The point is, there are people who would go to considerable lengths to see Montgomery discredited. His marriage to a respectable Eastern lady is meant to solidify his image as the man to lead Silver Creek into a new era of prosperity and respectability. And someone wanted to sabotage that, Dahlia concluded, using me as an unwitting pawn. It appears so, Xander agreed. The question is who. Before anyone could speculate further, the door opened again, this time revealing Mr. Pearson, the innkeeper. Xander, there's a rider from your ranch looking for you. Says it's urgent. Xander frowned, rising from his seat. Excuse me, ladies. I need to see what this is about. After he left, Lucy turned to Dahlia with a sympathetic smile. This must be overwhelming for you, coming all this way only to find yourself in the middle of our little town's politics. Overwhelming doesn't begin to describe it, Dahlia admitted. I spent nearly everything I had to get here. I don't even have enough for a return ticket to Boston. Lucy reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Then we'll just have to find you a position here. I could use an assistant at the school, actually. The town's growing, and 30 children of various ages is becoming too much for one teacher. But Mayor Montgomery said, Mayor Montgomery doesn't control the school board, Lucy said with a mischievous glint in her eye. That would be Mrs. Abernathy, who happens to be my landlady and no great admirer of our current mayor. If I recommend you, and you're as qualified as I suspect you are, she'll be delighted to approve your appointment if only to remind Montgomery that he doesn't have final say over everything in Silver Creek. For the first time since arriving, Dahlia felt a flicker of hope. You would do that for me. A complete stranger, Lucy's smile widened. Any woman brave enough to travel across the country alone to make a new life deserves a chance to succeed. Besides, I have a feeling about you, Dahlia Armstrong. I think you might be exactly what Silver Creek needs right now. By mid-morning, the stagecoach carrying the real Catherine Blackwell arrived in Silver Creek. From the window of the general store, where Lucy had taken her to purchase some necessities, Dahlia watched as a petite blonde woman in an elegant traveling suit descended from the coach. Mayor Montgomery was there to greet her along with several prominent townspeople. "She looks nothing like me," Dahlia murmured. Lucy peered over her shoulder. "No, but from a distance, and to someone who's never met either of you." A young woman traveling alone might be enough of a description to cause confusion. Or to create it deliberately, Dahlia added, turning away from the window. "I still don't understand who would go to such lengths." "We may never know," Lucy said pragmatically. "But the important thing now is to secure your position here. Mrs. Abernathy has agreed to meet us for lunch at the hotel. I've told her about your qualifications, and she's quite intrigued." As they left the store, Dahlia noticed a familiar figure riding down the main street. Xander Vandermeer sat tall in the saddle, his expression grim as he headed toward the sheriff's office. He didn't appear to notice them. "Is something wrong?" Lucy asked, following her gaze. "I'm not sure. Mr. Vandermeer Xander seemed troubled when he left breakfast." Lucy's expression softened. Xander has had more than his share of troubles. He and his brother Drew inherited the Double V Ranch from their father, but Drew was killed in a dispute with the neighboring property 3 years ago. That's what brought Xander back to Silver Creek to bury his brother and take over the ranch. "How terrible," Dahlia said, watching as Xander disappeared into the sheriff's office. "No wonder he seems guarded." "That's not the half of it," Lucy began, then stopped herself. "But it's not my story to tell. Come on, we don't want to keep Mrs. Abernathy waiting. She's a stickler for punctuality." The meeting with Mrs. Abernathy went better than Dahlia could have hoped. The formidable widow who chaired the school board was impressed with Dahlia's education and teaching experience, and even more impressed with her willingness to adapt to frontier conditions. "Most Eastern ladies come out here expecting things to be just like home, only with more space," Mrs. Abernathy observed, stirring her tea. "They're disappointed when they discover our comforts are fewer and our challenges greater." "I didn't come west expecting an easy life, Mrs. Abernathy," Dahlia replied honestly. "I came seeking opportunity and a chance to be useful." The older woman nodded approvingly. "Well said. I believe you'll find both here, Miss Armstrong. The position of assistant teacher is yours, provided you're willing to start immediately. The pay is $30 a month, with room and board included. You'll stay with Miss Winters in her cottage behind the schoolhouse." It was less than Dahlia had been promised in the fraudulent letter, but it was honest work and a roof over her head. "I accept with gratitude, Mrs. Abernathy." "Excellent. Lucy will show you the school this afternoon and help you get settled." Mrs. Abernathy rose, smoothing her skirts. "Oh, and Miss Armstrong, you might want to avoid Mayor Montgomery for the time being. He won't be pleased about this appointment given the circumstances of your arrival." "I'll do my best," Dahlia promised. After Mrs. Abernathy left, Lucy clapped her hands in delight. "Isn't this wonderful? We're going to be such good friends, I just know it, and the children will adore you." Dahlia couldn't help but smile at her new colleague's enthusiasm. "I hope so. I've always loved teaching, but I've never worked with frontier children before." "They're the same as children everywhere," Lucy assured her. "Just a bit more practical in their outlook and perhaps less concerned with etiquette. Now, let's collect your things and head to the schoolhouse. I want to show you everything before classes tomorrow." As they crossed the hotel lobby, they nearly collided with Xander, who was coming through the front door. His expression was even more somber than earlier. "Xander," Lucy greeted him, "we have wonderful news. Dahlia is staying in Silver Creek as my assistant teacher." He looked genuinely pleased. "That's excellent news. Congratulations, Dahlia." "Thank you, and thank you again for your help. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't intervened yesterday." "Speaking of interventions," Xander said, lowering his voice, "you both should know that there's been trouble at the Montgomery Ranch. 2 of his hands were found tied up this morning and a valuable horse is missing." Lucy gasped. "Horse thieves here?" "Looks that way. Sheriff's organizing a posse to track them." His eyes met Dahlia's. "I just wanted to warn you both to be careful. Lock your doors tonight. You don't think there's any connection to?" Dahlia let the question trail off, not wanting to voice her suspicions aloud. Xander's expression was unreadable. I think Silver Creek has suddenly become the site of too many unusual occurrences for my comfort. Just be watchful." With that cryptic warning, he tipped his hat and continued toward the dining room. "Well," Lucy said after a moment, "that was ominous. But I'm sure we'll be perfectly safe at the schoolhouse. It's on the edge of town, but all the children walk there daily without incident." Dahlia nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling that the horse theft and her own mysterious summons to Silver Creek might be connected in ways none of them yet understood. The schoolhouse proved to be a simple but sturdy building with large windows and rows of wooden desks. The attached cottage where Lucy lived and where Dahlia would now stay as well was small but charming, with 2 bedrooms, a cozy sitting room, and a kitchen with a cast iron stove. "It's not luxurious," Lucy apologized as she showed Dahlia to the smaller of the 2 bedrooms, "but it's comfortable and warm even in winter." "It's perfect," Dahlia assured her, setting down her valises. "I'm just grateful to have a place to stay and meaningful work." Lucy helped her unpack, chattering all the while about the school, the children, and the various personalities of Silver Creek. Dahlia listened with half an ear, her mind still turning over the strange circumstances that had brought her here. "Lucy," she said during a lull in the conversation, "what can you tell me about Xander Vandermeer? You mentioned he came back after his brother's death, but I sense there's more to his story." Lucy hesitated, folding a shawl she'd been helping put away. "Xander's complicated." The Vandermeers were one of the founding families of Silver Creek, quite prominent in the early days. But Xander's father lost most of their fortune through gambling and bad investments. When he died, the ranch was heavily mortgaged, and the brothers were barely holding on. "Is that why Xander left?" "Partly. But there was also an incident. A girl from town, Vivian Montgomery, the old mayor's daughter, was supposed to marry Xander. It was practically arranged since childhood. But she broke it off suddenly and married Robert Garrett instead, a wealthy rancher from the next county. Montgomery. She was related to the current mayor, his sister-in-law. She died in childbirth about 5 years ago, leaving Robert with their daughter. He since remarried and moved further west." Lucy's expression grew troubled. "The story in town was that Xander had been caught stealing from his employer. He worked for Vivian's father at the time, and she couldn't bear the shame. He left town under a cloud. But you don't believe that?" Lucy shook her head. "I was only 17 then, but even I could see there was something wrong with the story. Xander Vandermeer was many things, but a thief, never. He was too proud, too honorable. Yet he didn't defend himself, he just left, disappeared for 10 years. When he came back for Drew's funeral, many people were shocked to see how successful he'd become. He paid off all the ranch's debts and started rebuilding it into one of the most prosperous operations in the territory. Which made his accusers look foolish," Dahlia concluded. "Exactly. Especially since by then, old Mayor Hollister had been caught embezzling town funds himself. Many believe he framed Xander all those years ago, though no one's ever proven it. And Mayor Montgomery, where does he fit in?" James Montgomery married Vivian's younger sister, Eleanor, after Vivian died. When Hollister's corruption was exposed, James positioned himself as the respectable alternative, the honest businessman who would restore integrity to Silver Creek's governance. Yet Xander clearly doesn't think much of him. Lucy smiled sadly. "Would you, in his position? Montgomery has never publicly acknowledged that his father-in-law might have wronged Xander, and there are those who say he actively works against the Double V Ranch's interests whenever possible." "Politics and personal grudges," Dahlia murmured. "It seems I've stumbled into quite a tangled web." "Welcome to Silver Creek," Lucy said with a laugh, "where everyone knows everyone else's business or thinks they do, and 30-year-old feuds are still discussed like they happened yesterday." As the afternoon waned, Dahlia helped Lucy prepare lesson plans for the coming week. The work was familiar and comforting, a reminder that despite the strange circumstances of her arrival, she was where she belonged in a classroom, helping to shape young minds. By evening, they had settled into a comfortable routine, sharing the preparation of a simple supper and eating by lamplight at the small kitchen table. Lucy's stories about the town and its inhabitants helped Dahlia begin to form a mental map of Silver Creek's social landscape. Just as they were finishing the dishes, a knock at the door startled them both. Who could that be at this hour? Lucy wondered, drying her hands on her apron. The answer came in the form of Xander Vandermeer, standing on their doorstep with his hat in his hands and concern etched across his features. "I apologize for disturbing you so late," he said, "but I wanted to make sure you were both safe." "We're fine," Lucy assured him. "Has something happened?" Xander glanced past her to where Dahlia stood in the kitchen doorway. The posse tracked the horse thieves to an abandoned cabin about 10 miles north. They found Montgomery's horse, but the thieves were gone. "That's good news, isn't it?" Dahlia asked. "That they recovered the horse." "It would be, except for what else they found." Xander's expression grew grimmer. "Papers, letters, including what appears to be a draft of the letter that brought you to Silver Creek, Dahlia." The implications sank in slowly. "You mean whoever stole the mayor's horse is the same person who lured me here under false pretenses?" "It appears so, and there's more." Xander hesitated. "One of the posse members claimed to recognize items in the cabin as belonging to Sam Turner." Lucy gasped. "Sam Turner? But he's been gone for years." "Who's Sam Turner?" Dahlia asked, feeling once again like she was missing crucial pieces of a puzzle. "Drew Vandermeer's best friend," Lucy explained. "He disappeared right after Drew was killed. Most people assumed he'd moved on, unable to bear the memories." "Or unable to face me," Xander said quietly. "Drew died protecting him in a bar fight at the Silver Spur. I always wondered if Sam felt responsible." "And now you think he's back?" Lucy asked. "After all this time, why? I don't know, but I aim to find out." Xander's gaze settled on Dahlia. "Montgomery's organizing another posse for the morning. They're determined to find Turner or whoever was staying in that cabin. Until then, I'd advise you both to be extra cautious." "We will be," Dahlia promised. "Thank you for warning us." Xander nodded, seemingly reluctant to leave. "I'll check on you tomorrow after the posse returns. Lock your doors tonight." After he'd gone, Dahlia turned to Lucy. "This Sam Turner, why would he want to bring me to Silver Creek? I've never met the man in my life." Lucy shook her head, bewildered. "I have no idea unless—" "Unless what?" "Unless it wasn't about you at all. Maybe you were just a means to an end, a way to disrupt Montgomery's carefully orchestrated plans for his marriage to Catherine Blackwell." "But why would Sam Turner care about that?" Lucy's expression was troubled. "I don't know. But Silver Creek is a town full of old grudges and buried secrets. I'm beginning to think your arrival has stirred up more than anyone expected." That night, despite her exhaustion, Dahlia found sleep elusive. She lay awake in her narrow bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the frontier night and turning over the day's revelations in her mind. Who was Sam Turner, and what possible reason could he have for bringing her to Silver Creek? Was it truly just to disrupt Montgomery's wedding plans, or was there some deeper motive at work? And what of Xander Vandermeer, with his storm-gray eyes and complex history? Why had he taken such an immediate interest in her welfare? Questions without answers chased each other through her mind until, finally, she drifted into a restless sleep. Morning brought no clarity but did present new challenges in the form of 30 curious children, all eager to meet their new teacher. Dahlia found herself swept up in the rhythm of the school day, introducing herself, assisting Lucy with lessons, and gradually winning over even the most skeptical of her young charges. By afternoon, she had almost managed to put the mystery of her summons to Silver Creek out of her mind until the schoolhouse door opened during arithmetic lessons to admit Sheriff Wilson, his expression grave. "Miss Winters, Miss Armstrong," he said, nodding to each of them. "I apologize for the interruption, but I need a word with Miss Armstrong when convenient." Lucy glanced at the clock. "We're nearly finished for the day. Children, please complete problems 10 through 15 on your own. I'll check your work tomorrow." As the children bent to their tasks with varying degrees of enthusiasm, Lucy led the sheriff and Dahlia to a corner of the room. "What is it, Sheriff?" Dahlia asked, her heart racing with apprehension. "The posse found Sam Turner this morning," the sheriff said quietly. "He was camped by the river about 15 miles from town. He didn't resist arrest. And," Lucy prompted when he paused, "and he's asking to speak with Miss Armstrong, says he can explain everything." Dahlia felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath her feet. "Me." But I've never met the man. That's what I told him. He just smiled and said you'd want to hear what he has to say. The sheriff's weathered face showed concern. You don't have to talk to him if you don't want to, Miss Armstrong. He's being held at the jail, and he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Montgomery wants him charged with horse theft, fraud, and probably a few other things before he's through. Dahlia straightened her shoulders. No, I want to hear what he has to say. I deserve answers after being brought here under false pretenses. I'll come with you, Lucy offered immediately. Thank you, but I think this is something I need to do alone. Dahlia turned to the sheriff. When can I see him? I can take you over after school lets out if that suits. Dahlia nodded, determination replacing her earlier uncertainty. It does. I'll meet you at the jail in half an hour. The Silver Creek Jail was a small but solid stone building on the edge of town. As Sheriff Wilson led Dahlia inside, she was struck by how cool and dimly lit it was compared to the bright autumn day outside. He's in the back cell, the sheriff explained, leading her past his desk to a heavy door. I'll be right here if you need anything, just call out. The cell block contained only 2 cells, one empty and one occupied by a man who rose to his feet as they entered. Sam Turner was younger than Dahlia had expected, perhaps 35 with sandy hair and a lean build. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, and his expression as he regarded her was more curious than hostile. Miss Armstrong, he said, inclining his head slightly, thank you for coming. Sheriff Wilson unlocked a small interview room adjacent to the cells. You can talk in here. Door stays open and I'll be just outside. Once they were seated across from each other at a small table, Dahlia studied the man who had upended her life. Mr. Turner, I believe you owe me an explanation. He nodded, his blue eyes direct and unapologetic. I do. And I'm prepared to give you one, though I doubt it will make you any happier with me. Try me. Turner leaned forward slightly. First, I want you to know that I never intended for you to be stranded or harmed in any way. The letter promised a real teaching position with fair compensation. I would have ensured you received exactly that, regardless of how things played out. How magnanimous of you, Dahlia said dryly. You still haven't explained why you brought me here in the first place. To create a distraction, he admitted, and to deliver a message that needs to be heard. A message to whom? To Silver Creek, to Montgomery, and most of all to Xander Vandermeer. At the mention of Xander's name, Dahlia's interest sharpened. What does Mr. Vandermeer have to do with this? Sam Turner's expression softened with what looked like genuine regret. Everything. He's the reason I came back after all these years. I owe him a debt I can never repay and a truth he deserves to know. What truth? Turner glanced toward the open door, then lowered his voice. Drew Vandermeer didn't die in a random bar fight. He was murdered. And James Montgomery ordered it done. The accusation hung in the air between them, so shocking that Dahlia couldn't immediately form a response. That's a very serious allegation, she finally managed. Do you have proof? I was there, Turner said simply. Drew and I were celebrating at the Silver Spur. 3 men picked a fight with us strangers, we thought at the time. When things got ugly, Drew stepped between me and a knife meant for my back. He died in my arms. His voice caught slightly and he paused to collect himself. It wasn't until later, after I'd fled town in grief and guilt, that I learned those men had been hired by Montgomery. They disappeared the day after Drew's death, their services paid for in full. But why? Why would Montgomery want either of you dead? Because we knew too much. Turner's eyes held her steadily. Drew and I had discovered evidence that Montgomery and old Mayor Hollister were partners in a land fraud scheme. They were using inside information to buy up properties along the planned railroad route before the route was publicly announced. And Drew confronted them about it? No, we were still gathering evidence, but Montgomery must have gotten wind of our investigation. He couldn't risk it coming to light, not when he was positioning himself as the honest alternative to his corrupt father-in-law. Dahlia's mind raced. But that still doesn't explain why you brought me here under false pretenses. Why not just come back and tell Xander what you know? Turner gave a sad smile. Would he have believed me, after I ran away instead of standing beside him at his brother's funeral? Besides, Montgomery is powerful now. I needed leverage, and I needed public attention on him to ensure my own safety while I presented my evidence. So you arranged for me to arrive the day before his bride, creating confusion and drawing attention to Montgomery's personal affairs. Exactly. And I orchestrated the horse theft for the same reason, to keep him and the sheriff distracted while I made contact with people who could help me prove what really happened to Drew. Dahlia shook her head, trying to absorb it all. Did you find this proof? Some. Not enough, not yet. But with time you won't have now that you're in jail, she pointed out. Turner's expression grew more intent. That's where you come in, Miss Armstrong. I need you to get a message to Xander. Tell him to look in the old line shack on the north boundary of the Double V. Drew and I hid a strongbox under the floorboards beneath the cot. Inside is everything we'd gathered so far on Montgomery and Hollister's land deals. Why should I help you? You used me as a pawn in your revenge scheme. Not revenge, Turner corrected firmly. Justice. For Drew, who died because he was a good man who couldn't stand by while others were cheated. And for Xander, who deserves to know why he lost his brother. Dahlia studied him, trying to gauge his sincerity. Even if I believe you and I'm not saying I do, why would Montgomery kill for a land scheme? Surely such crimes aren't uncommon in frontier development. This was different. The land they acquired included water rights that effectively control half the county's ranching operations. They weren't just profiting from inside information, they were setting themselves up to dictate terms to every rancher for 50 miles, including the Double V. The pieces began to fall into place. So when Xander returned and paid off the ranch's debts, he became a threat to their control, yes. And he's been fighting Montgomery's water restrictions ever since, though he doesn't know the full story behind them. Dahlia sat back, overwhelmed by the implications. This is much bigger than I imagined. It usually is when powerful men are involved. Turner leaned forward earnestly. Will you help me, Miss Armstrong? Will you tell Xander what I've told you? Before she could answer, footsteps approached the door and Sheriff Wilson appeared. Time's up, I'm afraid. Mayor Montgomery is on his way over, and he's made it clear he doesn't want anyone talking to the prisoner. Dahlia rose, her mind still reeling. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Turner. He stood as well, his expression hopeful. Will you deliver my message? She hesitated, then gave a slight nod, not a commitment, but an acknowledgement. As the sheriff led her back through the office, she tried to make sense of everything she'd just heard. Could it be true? Had Montgomery really ordered a man's death to protect his business interests? And if so, what danger might Xander be in now? Outside the jail, she found herself face to face with Mayor Montgomery himself, accompanied by several town councilors. His expression darkened when he saw her. Miss Armstrong, I'm surprised to find you visiting the jail. I would have thought a schoolteacher would be more concerned with maintaining a respectable appearance. I was seeking answers, Mayor Montgomery, she replied, keeping her voice level. Something I believe we all want. His eyes narrowed slightly. Some questions are better left unasked, Miss Armstrong, particularly by newcomers who don't understand the complexities of our community. The threat was thinly veiled, and Dahlia felt a chill despite the warm afternoon sun. Perhaps. But I've always believed that truth is preferable to comfortable ignorance. A naive perspective, Montgomery said dismissively. Good day, Miss Armstrong. As he brushed past her into the jail, Dahlia realized her hands were trembling. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before starting back toward the schoolhouse. She had nearly reached it when she heard hoofbeats behind her. Turning, she saw Xander Vandermeer approaching on horseback. Dahlia, he called, reining in beside her. Sheriff Wilson told me you were at the jail. Did you speak with Turner? She glanced around, suddenly aware of how exposed they were on the main street. Yes, but I'd rather not discuss it here. Understanding flickered in his eyes. Can you meet me at the edge of town? By the old oak at the crossroads. In about an hour, she nodded, relieved that he hadn't pressed for details. I'll be there. An hour later, having made her excuses to Lucy about needing some time alone to process the day's events, Dahlia made her way to the massive oak tree that stood at the intersection of the main road and the trail leading west out of Silver Creek. Xander was already waiting, seated on a fallen log with his horse grazing nearby. He rose as she approached, his expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. Thank you for coming, he said. I thought it best we speak away from prying eyes and ears. I agree. Dahlia sat beside him on the log, gathering her thoughts. Mr. Turner had quite a story to tell. I'm listening. Carefully, she recounted everything Sam had told her about Drew's death, the land fraud scheme, and the hidden strongbox. Throughout her telling, Xander remained absolutely still, his face giving away nothing of his thoughts or feelings. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment, staring out at the mountains on the horizon. You believe him? He finally asked, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. Dahlia considered the question carefully. I have no way to verify his claims, but he seemed sincere, and his story explains both why he brought me to Silver Creek and why he's been hiding all these years. It would also explain other things, Xander said quietly. Things that never made sense about Drew's death, about Montgomery's rise to power. What will you do? He turned to face her, determination hardening his features. Find that strongbox. If what Turner says is true, the evidence inside could bring Montgomery down and finally bring justice for Drew. And if it's not there, or if it doesn't contain what Turner claims, then I'll know he's still the coward who ran instead of standing beside me at my brother's grave. The bitterness in his voice was palpable. Dahlia hesitated, then placed her hand lightly on his arm. I'd like to help if I can. Surprise flickered across his face. Why would you risk involving yourself further in this? You've already been used as a pawn once. Perhaps that's precisely why. I didn't choose to be brought into this situation, but now that I am, I want to see justice done. She smiled faintly. Besides, I find I've developed a certain fondness for Silver Creek in the short time I've been here. I'd like to know the town is in good hands. Something shifted in Xander's expression, a softening around the eyes, a slight curve of his mouth that wasn't quite a smile but suggested one might be possible. I can't ask you to put yourself at risk. You didn't ask, I offered. She withdrew her hand, suddenly self-conscious. What's your plan? He seemed to debate with himself before answering. The line shack Turner mentioned is about 2 hours' ride from here. I was planning to head out at first light tomorrow. Then I'll meet you here at dawn. Xander shook his head. Dahlia, it's too dangerous. If Montgomery suspects Turner told you anything, then I'm already in danger, aren't I? She countered. Better to see this through quickly than to wait for Montgomery to decide I'm a threat. He studied her face, as if seeing her truly for the first time. You're not what I expected when I pulled you behind that water trough 2 days ago. No, what did you expect? A frightened Eastern lady who'd turn tail and run at the first sign of trouble. Dahlia laughed softly. I may be an Eastern lady, Mr. Vandermeer, but I've never had the luxury of running from trouble. Life has a way of finding you regardless. His expression grew serious again. Dawn, then, bring warm clothes and sturdy shoes, and Dahlia, don't tell anyone where you're going, not even Lucy. I won't, she rose, brushing dust from her skirt. Until tomorrow. As she walked back to the schoolhouse, Dahlia wondered at her own boldness. 2 days ago, she'd been a proper Boston schoolteacher expecting a conventional position in a frontier town. Now she was preparing to ride into the wilderness with a man she barely knew, pursuing evidence of murder and corruption. Yet somehow, it felt right, as if the path she'd been meant to follow had finally revealed itself. That evening, she was quieter than usual, her mind preoccupied with preparations for the morning's journey. Lucy noticed but didn't pry, attributing Dahlia's distraction to the overwhelming events of the past few days. It's a lot to absorb, Lucy said sympathetically as they prepared for bed. New town, new position, and then all this business with Sam Turner and false letters. No wonder you're feeling out of sorts. I'm just tired, Dahlia assured her. A good night's sleep will set me right, but sleep proved elusive once again. She lay awake, listening to Lucy's steady breathing from the next room and wondering what tomorrow would bring. Would they find the strongbox? And if they did, would it contain the evidence Sam Turner claimed? Or was this all an elaborate deception for reasons she couldn't begin to fathom? When the first hint of dawn lightened the eastern sky, Dahlia was already dressed in her most practical outfit, a sturdy brown skirt, high-necked blouse, and the sturdiest boots she owned. She added a warm shawl and a small satchel containing a few essentials, then slipped quietly from the cottage, leaving a note for Lucy claiming she'd gone for an early morning walk to clear her head. Xander was waiting at the crossroads, leading not one horse but two. "I borrowed this mare from a friend," he explained. "She's gentle but sure-footed." Dahlia approached the chestnut mare cautiously. "I should warn you, my riding experience is limited to occasional outings in Boston's public gardens." A ghost of a smile touched Xander's lips. "She'll take care of you, just hold on and let her follow my horse." With his help, Dahlia mounted, adjusting her skirt as best she could for modesty while still allowing her to sit securely. The side saddle she was accustomed to in Boston would have been impractical on frontier trails. "Ready?" Xander asked, swinging easily onto his own mount. Dahlia nodded, gripping the reins perhaps a bit too tightly. "As I'll ever be." They set off at a gentle pace, heading north away from town. As the sun rose fully above the horizon, the landscape revealed itself in all its rugged beauty, rolling hills giving way to steeper terrain, scattered stands of pine and aspen, and in the distance, the jagged peaks of mountains still dusted with early snow. Dahlia found herself relaxing as they rode, the mare's steady gait building her confidence. Xander maintained a watchful silence, scanning the terrain ahead and occasionally glancing back to ensure she was managing. "It's beautiful," she said after they'd been riding for nearly an hour. "Different from anything I've seen before." Xander followed her gaze to where an eagle soared overhead against the impossibly blue sky. "The first time I saw the Rockies, I was 7 years old. My father took Drew and me hunting. I remember thinking they looked like the backbone of the world." A poetic observation for a 7-year-old. My mother loved poetry. She read to us every night Wordsworth, Shelley, Byron. She was from Boston originally. Dahlia looked at him in surprise. "I didn't know that. She died when I was 12, influenza." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Dahlia sensed the old grief beneath the words. "I'm sorry. I lost my mother young as well," he nodded, acknowledging the shared experience without dwelling on it. "The line shack is just over that ridge. We should reach it in another hour." They continued in companionable silence, the rhythm of the horse's hooves and the occasional call of a bird the only sounds disturbing the morning stillness. Dahlia found herself studying Xander's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the watchful eyes that missed nothing, the way he sat in the saddle as if born to it. There was something compelling about him beyond his physical appearance. A sense of contained strength, of principles held firm despite hardship. She could understand why, even after 10 years away, people like Lucy and the Pearsons still spoke of him with respect and affection. As they crested the ridge, Xander pulled up sharply, raising a hand to signal her to stop. "What is it?" she asked, reining in beside him. He pointed to a thin wisp of smoke rising from the chimney of a small cabin nestled in the trees below. "Someone's at the line shack." Dahlia's heart raced. "Montgomery, possibly, or one of his men." Xander's expression hardened. "Stay here." "I'm going to take a closer look." "No," she said firmly. "We do this together or not at all." He looked as if he might argue, then sighed. "Stubborn woman, all right, but we approach carefully. Stay behind me and do exactly as I say." They dismounted, tethering the horses to a tree just below the ridgeline, and proceeded on foot. Xander led the way, moving with a silent grace that spoke of years spent in the wilderness. Dahlia followed as quietly as she could, grateful for her sturdy boots as they picked their way down the rocky slope. As they neared the cabin, Xander motioned for her to wait while he circled to get a better view of who might be inside. She pressed herself against the trunk of a large pine, heart pounding as she watched him disappear around the side of the structure. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Finally, just as Dahlia was debating whether to follow or stay put, Xander reappeared, his expression grim. "Montgomery's not there," he said in a low voice. "But 2 of his men are. They're tearing the place apart looking for something." "The strong box," Dahlia whispered. Turner must not have been as discreet as he thought in his questioning, or Montgomery's just being thorough. Xander's jaw tightened. "Either way, we need to get to that strongbox before they find it. But how? We can't just walk in." "No, but we can create a distraction." He thought for a moment, then turned to her with a glint in his eye that was almost mischievous. "How convincing an actress are you, Dahlia Armstrong?" 10 minutes later, Dahlia stumbled into the clearing before the lined shack, her hair deliberately loosened from its pins and her shawl hanging askew. "Hello," she called, injecting her voice with fear and confusion. "Is anyone there?" "I've lost my way." The cabin door burst open and two rough-looking men emerged, clearly startled by her appearance. "Who the hell are you?" the taller one demanded, hand moving toward the gun at his hip. Dahlia summoned tears, letting them spill down her cheeks. "Please, I was out riding and my horse threw me. I've been walking for hours. I thought I'd never find help." The men exchanged glances. The shorter one, a stocky fellow with a bushy beard, stepped forward. "You're a long way from town, miss." "I know, I was so foolish. My first time out alone, and I thought I knew the way back." She wrung her hands, watching from the corner of her eye as Xander slipped around the back of the cabin. "Could I trouble you for some water? I'm terribly thirsty." The bearded man looked uncertain, but the taller one nodded reluctantly. "I suppose so. Come in, but make it quick. We got work to do." Inside, the cabin was sparse but functional, a single room with a small stove, a rough-hewn table with two chairs, and a narrow cot against the far wall. The floor had been partially pulled up, confirming Xander's suspicion that they were searching for the strongbox. "Sit there," the taller man said, pointing to one of the chairs while his companion dipped a ladle into a water bucket. Dahlia perched on the edge of the chair, accepting the water with trembling hands that weren't entirely feigned. "Thank you, you're very kind. What's your name, miss?" the bearded man asked, seemingly genuinely concerned. "Dahlia Armstrong. I'm the new assistant teacher in Silver Creek." Recognition dawned in his eyes. "The one that Turner brought here with that fake letter," she nodded, fear flickering through her. "How much did they know?" "Thought so," the taller man said, his expression hardening. "And I'm guessing you didn't just happen to get lost out here, did you?" "Not the day after talking to Turner in jail." Dahlia's mouth went dry. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do." He stepped closer, looming over her. "Turner told you about something hidden here, didn't he? That's why you're really out here." I don't." The sound of a rifle being cocked froze everyone in place. "Step away from her," Xander's voice commanded from the doorway. Now, the men slowly raised their hands, turning to find themselves staring down the barrel of Xander's Winchester. "Vandermeer," the taller man spat. "Should have known you'd be mixed up in this." "On the floor, both of you," Xander ordered. "Face down, hands behind your backs." As they complied, grumbling, Dahlia leapt to her feet. "The floorboard's under the cot," she whispered. "That's where Turner said it would be." Keeping the rifle trained on the men, Xander nodded toward a coil of rope hanging by the door. "Tie their hands first. I don't want any surprises." With shaking fingers, Dahlia did as he asked, binding each man's wrists securely. Once they were restrained, Xander handed her the rifle. "Keep this on them. If either one moves, don't hesitate to fire." She took the weapon, hoping her inexperience wasn't obvious. "I won't." Xander turned his attention to the cot, shoving it aside to reveal the partially dismantled floorboards beneath. He knelt, prying up several more planks until he uncovered a small iron box. "This is it," he said, voice tight with anticipation. The box was locked, but a few moments' work with his knife on the simple mechanism was enough to spring it open. Inside lay a stack of papers, maps, and what appeared to be a journal. Xander leafed through them quickly, his expression growing more intent with each page. "It's all here," he said finally, looking up at Dahlia with a mixture of vindication and grim satisfaction. "Land deeds, records of payments, notes on the railroad survey, everything Turner said would be here, and Drew's journal detailing their investigation. Enough to prove Montgomery's involvement in the land fraud, more than enough." He closed the box and stood. "And possibly enough to connect him to Drew's murder." The taller of their captives laughed harshly from his position on the floor. "You really think that'll matter? Montgomery owns half the county now. No one's going to touch him, evidence or no evidence." Xander regarded him coldly. "We'll see about that." Gathering the strongbox under one arm, he took the rifle back from Dahlia. "Let's go. We'll send someone back for these two once we're clear." Outside, they hurried back to where they'd left the horses, neither speaking until they were mounted and heading back toward Silver Creek. "What now?" Dahlia asked as they rode side by side along a wider stretch of trail. "Now we take this to Judge Harmon in the county seat." He's known for his integrity. Montgomery hasn't managed to buy him off yet. And after that, Xander's expression was resolute. After that, we make sure everyone knows the truth about James Montgomery and what he did to my brother. They rode hard, reaching Silver Creek by early afternoon. The town seemed unusually quiet as they approached. No children playing in the schoolyard, no shoppers moving between stores, no workers visible at the lumber mill. "Something's wrong," Xander said, slowing his horse to a walk as they entered the main street. Dahlia felt it too, a tension in the air, an unnatural stillness that raised the hair on the back of her neck. "Where is everyone?" Her question was answered as they neared the town square. A crowd had gathered there, surrounding the gazebo where Mayor Montgomery stood addressing them. Beside him, looking pale but composed, was Lucy. "Must understand the seriousness of the situation," Montgomery was saying as they approached. "Two dangerous men have escaped custody, men who have already demonstrated their willingness to use innocent parties for their schemes. If anyone has information about Miss Armstrong's whereabouts, now is the time to come forward." "What's he talking about?" Dahlia whispered to Xander. "Sam Turner is still in jail, isn't he?" Xander's expression darkened, unless Montgomery arranged otherwise. Before he could elaborate, someone in the crowd spotted them. "There, it's Miss Armstrong." All heads turned, and a collective murmur ran through the assembly. Montgomery's face registered shock, quickly masked by a politician's smile. "Miss Armstrong, what a relief to find you safe. When you didn't appear for school this morning, we feared the worst." Xander and Dahlia exchanged a look before dismounting. With the strongbox tucked securely under his arm, Xander helped her through the crowd until they stood before the gazebo. "What's going on here, Montgomery?" Xander demanded. "What dangerous men are you talking about?" The mayor's smile tightened. "Sam Turner escaped from jail last night, and this morning we discovered that the two men I sent to secure my property at the old line shack were attacked and tied up." "That's a lie," Dahlia said clearly, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent square. "Mr. Turner couldn't have escaped because Mayor Montgomery ordered him killed last night." A shocked gasp rippled through the crowd, Montgomery's face flushed with anger. "That's an outrageous accusation." "Sheriff Wilson, arrest this woman for slander." The sheriff stepped forward uncertainly. "Now, Mayor, let's not be hasty, and while you're at it," Xander interrupted, holding up the strongbox, "you might want to take a look at this. Evidence of land fraud orchestrated by Montgomery and old Mayor Hollister. The same fraud my brother was investigating when he was murdered 3 years ago." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, more agitated. Montgomery's composure slipped further. "These are desperate lies. Vandermeer has always been jealous of my success, and now he's corrupted this. This Eastern schoolteacher with his fantasies of persecution. They're not fantasies," a new voice called from the edge of the crowd. Heads turned to see Sheriff Wilson escorting a haggard but very much alive Sam Turner through the parting townspeople. "Sheriff, I ordered that man kept in isolation," Montgomery sputtered. "Yes, you did," Wilson agreed mildly. "Right after you sent your man Garrett to question him last night. Fortunately, I decided Mr. Turner might be safer in my home than in a cell anyone could access." Turner stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Montgomery. "I was there the night Drew Vandermeer was killed. I saw the men you hired attack us. I heard Drew's last words that we needed to warn his brother about what we'd discovered." "Hearsay from a known criminal," Montgomery protested, but his voice lacked conviction as he saw the mood of the crowd turning against him. "Open the box, Xander," Turner urged. "Let them all see what Montgomery's been hiding." With deliberate movements, Xander laid out the contents of the strongbox on the gazebo railing: deeds, maps, financial records, and finally, Drew's journal. As people pressed forward to see, Montgomery's face drained of color. "This is a conspiracy," he insisted weakly. "Vandermeer and Turner cooked this up together to ruin me." "Is that why you had Drew killed?" Xander asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Because he and Sam cooked up evidence of your crimes." I didn't," Montgomery's composure cracked entirely. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. Hollister said they just needed to be scared off." The admission hung in the air, damning in its implications. A low, angry murmur ran through the crowd. Sheriff Wilson stepped onto the gazebo, his hand resting meaningfully on his sidearm. James Montgomery, I'm placing you under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and land fraud. You have the right to remain silent. As the sheriff led a shaken Montgomery away, the crowd erupted in a chaos of questions and exclamations. Dahlia found herself pulled into Lucy's fierce embrace. I was so worried when I found your note, Lucy cried, and then when the sheriff came looking for you. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth, Dahlia said, returning her friend's hug. It was too dangerous. I understand now. Lucy drew back, her eyes shining with admiration. You're the bravest person I've ever met, Dahlia Armstrong. Over Lucy's shoulder, Dahlia saw Xander deep in conversation with Sam Turner. The two men clasped hands briefly, years of misunderstanding and separation healing in that simple gesture. When Xander looked up and his eyes met hers across the square, something passed between them, an acknowledgement of what they'd accomplished together, and perhaps something more. In the days that followed, Silver Creek experienced a seismic shift in its power structure. Judge Harmon arrived from the county seat to review the evidence and take statements. Montgomery was transferred to the county jail to await trial, while several of his closest associates found themselves similarly implicated in the land fraud scheme. The town council, now led by Mrs. Abernathy after a hastily called emergency election, voted unanimously to confirm Dahlia's position as assistant teacher. They also offered a public apology for the deception that had brought her to Silver Creek, along with a bonus to compensate for her troubles. Sam Turner was exonerated of all charges related to the horse theft and false letter. His testimony about Drew Vandermeer's murder proved crucial in building the case against Montgomery and the men who had carried out the actual killing. Through it all, Dahlia found herself drawn more and more to Xander Vandermeer. They met often initially to discuss the case against Montgomery, but increasingly for the simple pleasure of each other's company. They rode together on the weekends, exploring the beautiful country around Silver Creek. He showed her his ranch, introducing her to the hands who worked for him and sharing his plans for its future. One evening, nearly a month after Montgomery's arrest, Xander invited Dahlia to dinner at the hotel restaurant, a formal invitation that Lucy insisted required her best dress and most careful coiffure. He's going to propose, Lucy predicted as she helped Dahlia arrange her hair. I've never seen Xander look at anyone the way he looks at you. Don't be ridiculous, Dahlia protested, though her cheeks flushed at the thought. We've known each other barely a month. Sometimes a month is all it takes when it's right, Lucy said wisely. Besides, you two have been through more together in 4 weeks than most couples experience in years. Dahlia couldn't deny the truth of that. The intensity of their shared experiences had forged a bond between them that defied conventional timelines. Still, she tried to temper her expectations as she made her way to the hotel that evening. Xander was waiting in the lobby, looking uncharacteristically formal in a dark suit with a crisp white shirt. His eyes widened appreciably when he saw her in her best blue silk dress, her hair arranged in soft curls around her face. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you. You clean up rather well yourself, Mr. Vandermeer, he smiled, offering his arm. Shall we? The hotel dining room had been transformed for the evening, with white linen tablecloths and candles on every table. A vase of late wildflowers adorned their table by the window, and the hotel's cook had prepared a special menu for the occasion. As they dined, they spoke of everyday matters, the progress of Dahlia's students, developments at the ranch, Lucy's budding romance with the new telegraph operator. It was only when dessert was served that Xander turned the conversation to more personal matters. I've been thinking a lot about the strange circumstances that brought you to Silver Creek, he said, setting down his coffee cup. About how something meant to create confusion and discord ended up bringing clarity and justice instead. A fortunate accident, Dahlia agreed. Was it an accident, though? Xander's gray eyes held hers intently. Or was it something more? I've never been a great believer in fate, but I find myself wondering if some things aren't meant to be, regardless of the twisted paths that lead to them. Dahlia's heart quickened. What things might those be? You, here, with me." He reached across the table to take her hand. "When I first saw you standing in the street that day, I thought you were just another Eastern lady who'd find the West too harsh and leave at the first opportunity. I couldn't have been more wrong." "I'm glad you think so. I know so." His thumb traced a gentle pattern across her knuckles. "You're the strongest, most determined woman I've ever met, Dahlia Armstrong, and the most beautiful inside and out." She felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "Xander, let me finish. I know it's only been a month. I know by all conventional standards this is too soon, but nothing about our relationship has been conventional from the start." His expression grew more serious. "I don't want to waste any more time. Life is too unpredictable, too precious for that." With his free hand, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Dahlia's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It was my mother's," he explained softly. "She'd want you to have it." "Xander, I'm not asking for an immediate answer," he said quickly. "I know you need time to consider. You have a position here now, a life you're building. I don't want to disrupt that." Dahlia found herself smiling at his uncharacteristic uncertainty. "Are you actually going to ask the question, Mr. Vandermeer? Or am I supposed to intuit it from context?" A slow smile spread across his face. "Dahlia Armstrong, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" She looked into those storm-gray eyes that had captivated her from the first moment and knew with absolute certainty what her answer would be. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will." The joy that transformed his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then raised her hand to his lips. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that decision." "I know you will." She squeezed his hand. "Though I should warn you, I still can't ride very well and I know nothing about ranching." He laughed, the sound rich and free in a way she'd never heard before. "I'm a patient teacher, and you're a quick study from what I've seen." "There is one thing I've been wondering," Dahlia said as they left the restaurant, arm in arm. "That first day when you pulled me behind the water trough, you called me Catherine Blackwell. Did you really think I was Montgomery's mail-order bride?" Xander's expression turned sheepish. "Not exactly. I knew Montgomery was expecting a bride from the East, and when I saw you looking lost and confused, I'll admit I was curious to meet the woman who'd agreed to marry James Montgomery sight unseen." "So you deliberately misidentified me." "I did," he admitted. "Not my proudest moment." "And if I had been Catherine Blackwell, what then?" He considered the question seriously. "I'd have warned her about the man she was planning to marry, tried to convince her to look more carefully before committing herself." "How gallant," she teased, "rescuing women from unfortunate marriages." "Only the ones who look like they might be worth rescuing." His eyes twinkled. "Which, as it turns out, you definitely were." They reached the schoolhouse cottage, where a lamp burned in the window, Lucy's signal that she was still awake and waiting for news. "I should go in," Dahlia said reluctantly. "Lucy will be bursting with curiosity." "Of course." Xander took both her hands in his. "May I call on you tomorrow? Perhaps we could ride out to the ranch. There's a spot by the river I'd like to show you where I thought we might build our home." The casual way he included her in his future plans made her heart swell with happiness. "I'd like that very much." He bent to kiss her then, a gentle press of lips that deepened into something more profound, a promise of the life they would build together. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "You know, when I first called you Catherine Blackwell and you corrected me, I remember thinking, here's a woman who knows her own mind. Here's someone who won't be mistaken for anyone but herself." "And now?" she asked softly. "Now I know I was right." His smile held all the warmth of the setting sun. "You're not Catherine Blackwell or anyone else. You're Dahlia Armstrong, soon to be Dahlia Vandermeer, and you're exactly who you're meant to be." As Dahlia watched him walk away, the pearl on her finger catching the light from the cottage window, she reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought her to Silver Creek. A fraudulent letter, a case of mistaken identity, a search for justice, all of it leading to this moment, this happiness she could never have anticipated. She thought of what Xander had said about things that were meant to be, regardless of the twisted paths that led to them. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps some endings were written long before the story began. With a smile, she turned toward the cottage door, ready to share her news with Lucy and embrace the future that awaited her not as another's bride, but as her own woman, choosing her own path with the man who truly loved her. Lucy's prediction proved accurate. The town of Silver Creek buzzed with excitement over the engagement of Xander Vandermeer and the new schoolteacher. The fact that they had been instrumental in exposing Mayor Montgomery's crimes only added to the romantic appeal of their story. The wedding was set for spring, giving them time to prepare properly and for Dahlia to complete her first year of teaching. In the meantime, they spent every available moment together riding the boundaries of the Double V, planning their future home, and gradually learning the intricate dance of two independent people becoming partners in life. On a crisp autumn afternoon 6 months after Montgomery's arrest, Dahlia stood on the ridge overlooking the spot where Xander proposed they build their home. The cottonwoods along the river had turned to gold, and the distant mountains wore their first dusting of snow. Beside her, Xander spread out the architect's drawings they had commissioned. "The bedroom windows will face east," he explained, tracing the lines with his finger, "so you can wake with the sunrise. And here," he pointed to a large room at the front of the house, "is the library you wanted with built-in shelves for all your books." Dahlia leaned against his shoulder, studying the plans. "It's perfect, though I still think a 6-bedroom house might be excessive for just the two of us." He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her closer. "I have hopes for filling those bedrooms eventually. Unless you'd prefer to remain a school teacher rather than a mother, I see no reason why I can't be both, at least for a while." She turned in his embrace to face him. "Lucy has already said she'd be happy to have me continue part-time after we're married, and once children come along. Well, we'll figure it out as we go." The tenderness in his eyes made her heart skip. "Have I told you lately how much I love you, Dahlia Armstrong?" "Not in the last hour or so," she teased. He kissed her then, a kiss that still held the power to make her forget everything but the feel of his arms around her and the promise of their shared future. "I'll never get tired of that," she murmured when they finally parted. "Good. Because I plan to kiss you like that every day for the rest of our lives." As they gathered the plans and prepared to ride back to town, Dahlia thought about how dramatically her life had changed in just half a year. The woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in Silver Creek, clutching a fraudulent letter and expecting a conventional teaching position, would hardly recognize the woman she had become: confident, adventurous, and deeply in love. She had come west seeking a new beginning, never imagining that beginning would include exposing corruption, finding justice for a murdered man, and falling in love with his brother. Life, it seemed, had a way of offering so much more than one could anticipate, if only one had the courage to embrace its unexpected turns. As she mounted her horse much more confidently now after months of Xander's patient instruction, Dahlia looked over at the man who would soon be her husband. He sat tall in the saddle, his face turned toward the setting sun, a man at peace with his past and eager for his future. "What are you thinking about?" she asked as they rode side by side down the ridge. He glanced over, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I was thinking about that day we met, about how I mistook you for another man's bride. A fortunate mistake, as it turned out. The most fortunate mistake of my life." His expression grew more serious. "You know, when I said then, 'Let me be the man who truly loves you,' I didn't actually expect you to take me up on the offer." Dahlia laughed, the sound carrying across the open landscape. "Is that what you were thinking when you pulled me behind that water trough? That you wanted to be the man who truly loved me? Not consciously, perhaps, but looking back. Yes, I think some part of me recognized something special in you from the very beginning." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the steady rhythm of hoofbeats and the occasional call of a hawk overhead. "Do you ever wonder about her?" Dahlia asked eventually. "The real Catherine Blackwell?" Xander considered the question. "Sometimes. Last I heard, she'd returned to Philadelphia after Montgomery's arrest. Can't say I blame her. No, it's hard to imagine anyone wanting to marry a man capable of ordering another's death for financial gain. Montgomery will pay for that," Xander said, his voice hardening slightly. The trial's set for next month, and with Turner's testimony and Drew's journal, there's little doubt about the outcome. Will it bring you peace? Dahlia asked gently. Seeing justice done for Drew, he was quiet for a long moment. Not peace, exactly. Nothing can bring Drew back or give us back the years we lost. But closure, yes. A chance to finally lay the past to rest and focus entirely on our future. As they approached Silver Creek, the lights of the town beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk, Dahlia reflected on how fitting those words were. Their story had begun with mistaken identity and deception, but would continue with truth and love, a future built on the solid foundation of who they really were and what they meant to each other. In the years that followed, as their home rose by the river and their family grew, Dahlia would often think back to that first encounter, to the moment when fate, or chance, or perhaps something more deliberate had brought her to Silver Creek and into Xander's life. She had been confused for another's bride, but had found instead the man who truly loved her, not for who he thought she was or who he wanted her to be, but for who she truly was. And in that recognition, that acceptance, they had both found the greatest gift of all, the freedom to become their best selves together. Their story, like the West itself, had begun with hardship and uncertainty, but blossomed into something beautiful and enduring, a love as vast as the sky above Silver Creek, and as steadfast as the mountains that watched over their home.